good afternoon and welcome to another Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation's Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions. And I'm going to be your guest host today, Michael Kernodle, and we have a special guest today. Our today's educator is none other than Tyler Wertman, and the topic is learning from licks. And I know all of our jazz musicians here, whether you're a beginner or you're an experienced, seasoned musician, you know how important it is to just listen and transcribe. So we're going to hear from one of our experts today to see what his advice is on learning from licks. And we just want to remind you that, we hope that you enjoy today's sessions, but there's more upcoming free sessions. They're going to be posted on our website, www.clearwaterjazz.com/education. And we love hearing from our audience. So if you want to email us, we would greatly appreciate that. Email us at info@clearwaterjazz.com. And we want to thank our sponsors. So be sure to check out the studio archives of our past sessions at our website. And that's brought to you by our friends over there at Blue Water Wealth Management at Stewart Partners and Duke Energy, as well as our Young Lion podcast, wherever you stream. And that's brought to you by our friends at Marine Max Clearwater. So just search Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions wherever you stream. So some of our sessions that we've had Tyler to give us, and they're all been great. I'm going to name a few. We had basic trombone fundamentals, long tones and long slurs. We had scale pattern practice and alternate positions on trombones. And that's very, very important for all our trombonists that's listening. How about this? Approaching a transcription. And one of my favorites here, chord scale practice and approaches on the trombone. I really like that one. And he recently did a great bebop and blues class. I love that one. And that was a trombone master class. But before we start, I just want to say a little bit about Tyler, and you're going to meet him in just a second. He is a jazz trombonist, and he's been with us with several events here at Clearwater Jazz Holiday with the outreach programs and the Young Lion Master Sessions, and also My Journey with Jazz programs. As you see, he does it all. He's a composer, performer, and producer. He's focused on jazz and classical styles. He performs with many groups and ensembles which have taken him on many travels. He's an adjunct faculty professor of music at Bauer School of Music at Florida Gulf Coast University. And there's plenty that he do. He's also the FGCU basketball band director, and he teaches the FGCU student brass quartet and the jazz combo too. He has private lessons, instrumental lessons, and he's the assistant instructor of the FGCU Big Band. Where does he find all the time to do all of these things and be an awesome musician? That's the question. But we won't stop there. He's also an instructor of music at the University of Tampa, where he's presently teaching Introduction to Jazz. He received his Bachelor's of Arts in Music from FSU and his Master's of Music and Jazz Studies from USF. So, without any further ado, Tyler Wertman, Professor, the stage is all yours.
Thank you, as always, for that fantastic and warm introduction. It's a pleasure to teach with you all, and a pleasure to be here. And like you said, last week we had a great lesson plan on bebop and the blues. And those are two very, very common art forms found in jazz. And if we are going to progress and study this music, those are two art forms that we need to sort of dive into a little bit more. Now, instead of just having a bebop and blues 2 session, I sort of want to build from where we left off on that last session. If you guys recall, we were demonstrating certain ideas, or maybe licks, as some people call them, in these two art forms. So we demonstrated some bebop examples, and we demonstrated some blues examples. Now, also, what we did was we sort of experimented with those examples to see what other material we can pull or create from this idea lick et cetera, whatever you wanted to call it. So the whole point is to have a phrase, okay, and then we are growing from that phrase by utilizing the musical material that's inside. Now, whether or not that musical material, how we analyze it is maybe in a blues format or maybe a bebop format, that's for us to decide and us to play. Now, learning from licks, that is today's topic. And it's very easy, but yet it's complex at the same time, because you can buy, John Coltrane's Omnibook now, Charlie Parker's Omnibook, and you have all of these jazz masters transcriptions in front of you. Okay, now those books, you might not necessarily see them as jazz lick books or jazz phrasing books, but maybe this is something that you should look at. So with the Charlie Parker Omnibook is the basic example that I like to go towards, because at the University of South Florida, Jack Wilkins had us in our jazz improv class analyze his entire book from the top down and section off in our own binders different areas, okay, that Bird or Charlie Parker might have used, dominant to tonic ideas, okay, or predominant to dominant ideas. Okay, so that might be 5-1 or 2-5. Now, there's more than one way, obviously, to go from one chord to the next. Now, by analyzing Charlie Parker's language, we can see that a 2-5 or a predominant to dominant may involve some more bebop material, something that might sound like this. Now, if we were going to analyze that, what was Charlie Parker doing? Well, he started off by voice leading down to the third of our 2 chord. And closing the third of our 5 chord. So that is the predominant to dominant movement here. That's all predominant. Now we're on our dominant chord. And then we can resolve then to our major chord. Now, again, that was predominant, dominant to tonic. And that could be 3 bars, okay, of this Omnibook, whatever solo you wanted to call out. So you see those 3 bars, and now we, as a musician, say, okay, I really do enjoy these, or this phrase here, this lick, this line. How can I incorporate this into my own playing? Now, this is a lot easier to do rather than saying, oh, I really like this entire solo. How do I solo like this? Okay, that is obviously a more complicated approach. Now, by taking one line, one phrase, you can analyze how the musician, in this case, Charlie Parker, navigates through his chords, okay, through his predominant. As we discussed, he likes to go to the third, right? The second note that I played was the third of G minor 7. He enclosed the third of our 5 chord, which is C, E natural, which is over a C7 chord. Okay, and then again, I resolved our chord to the third, again, of F major, which is A natural. So by all these uses of thirds and sevenths, okay, Charlie Parker's able to perform these single note lines, and at the same time, we can clearly hear this harmony that's being demonstrated. Okay, because as a trombonist, as a trumpet player, as a saxophonist, we can't play chords, right? We can't play 4 notes at the same time. We can't tell you exactly what we're playing with, one series of 4 or 5 notes. What can we do? We can outline these chords, outline these phrases, outline these, licks, however you wanted to approach it, and then incorporate them to our own playing. Now, it's important to understand why you're attracted to a certain sound. Okay, why you might be, why you might like John Coltrane's Giant Steps, for example. Okay, there's a sound there that is attracting your ear. Now, it's important as a musician to understand and analyze why you like this sound. For me, Charlie Parker's voice leading is it's perfect. Okay, now, do I play saxophone? Not at all. So I'm going to have to try to incorporate some of those things that Charlie Parker does on the trombone. Okay, and like I said, I can't necessarily, I love how Charlie Parker plays Confirmation, let me do that verbatim on trombone. You can, but it might not, or you might not get as much out of it as by taking this phrase or 2 or 3 phrases, really sitting down, analyzing, and then incorporating those lines into your own vocabulary. Okay, it's more than just reading at the end of the day. And that's what I tell my students. I encourage them to go out and transcribe, because that tells me that they're listening, A, and B, they found something that they've liked enough to learn. Now, you shouldn't take that for granted at the end of the day. It's really important to understand why you are attracted to something. Now, for that sound, like I was saying, with Charlie Parker, right, going to the thirds, a lot of the enclosures that he might do, I really enjoy that sound. It clearly defines the harmony of these chords, while at the same time giving you some playing room, right? So that's what I try to take from the Omnibook through these different examples. Was I trying to play all of his 30-second runs? No, I wish I can, right? That would be awesome. But to understand his playing on, any level that I can relate to, you have to start slow. Okay. And even more than that, you need to know where to start. And that can be the almost scary part when approaching a transcription, right? Because we'll hear these masters lay down these amazing solos. I mean, absolutely perfect, swinging. You're probably thinking, oh, how are they thinking of that? I'll never be able to, to think of all of those patterns and all of those, lines or licks. Well, guess what? They have sat down and practiced all of these things, as well as sat down and learn to understand how to use these things. And that's almost more important than just to sit down and learn the lick, okay? Or whichever lick, not the lick, right? But that level of understanding is more important than the performance in some ways, because when you do perform, if you have that level of understanding, it's going to come back in your playing. And that is the ultimate goal here, right? We, as musicians, we practice, then we go out and we perform, right? And so when we perform, do we expect to play completely new material that we've never performed in the practice room before? No, we're taking those things from the practice room and then performing them, making music, combining them with however we're feeling that day, right? Maybe you might be using more space because you might be a little bit sadder, okay? Or maybe you're very energetic and you just got first day of summer, right? And so you took that first course and you're out the gates, you're flying. And that's great. But it's that understanding of how and when to use these lines or licks. It's going to be very important, right? So why do you like the lick is something to be studied again and analyzed. So with bebop and blues now, say we have a blues line or blues lick. Okay, and we'll keep it very, very simple for this purpose, this demonstration. So for this lick, I'll use 2 notes. Okay, so 3 notes total, I'll only use 2. But what we can do with these, very few notes is few and far between. We can actually create a whole solo just from these 2 notes. Okay, and something we might need to use is repetition. Okay, that's something I talked about in our last lesson. Okay, in order to truly create and have natural phrasing, you need to build from what you've said previously in your solos. Now, this can be done, like I said, sequencing, repetition, or even adding different notes here. So we'll keep this line, this lick. Now, I was trying to obviously keep things as simple as possible. Now, that was one whole course, okay? And if you were to come after, say, a musician who has just played, a few courses of solos, and maybe their last course, they were all over the place. They were playing, so fast, so high, so loud. It's time to maybe take that and put a different energy after that solo, right? You want each person's solo to be personable, right? And so you can either take that energy, run with it high, or maybe do something contrasting, maybe in that style. Now, I'm going to build from that very simple lick to sort of demonstrate maybe some more advanced lines that you could create from the blues or that blues lick. 1, 2. And so this form that I'm using is a minor blues. It's a 12-bar blues form, slightly altered from our major blues, but hopefully you can hear this phrasing as well. So it's building, it's growing. It's not necessarily, playing one lick to another lick, to a third lick, to a fourth lick. It's about taking that line 1, that phrase 1, and sort of moving it to your next area, whether that's your 4 chord, whether that's a 2/5, whether that's, a turnaround. All of these things you have to be conscious about, but at the same time, it's about navigating that initial thought, that initial phrase throughout the solo, right? And that is really how we begin to learn from these licks. Okay, it's similar to a journalist, a novelist, when they, write a book. Are they going to start chapter 1, and then all of a sudden just change places, 10 different times. No, they're going to try to give you a consistent story that you can follow along. Exactly the same when we are improvising. Okay, we need to sort of have that start, that chapter 1, and understand how we are going to get to the end. Okay, and there might be some jumps, some turns, some things that happen in the middle, and that's okay. That's great. That's what makes this music have life, right? The drummer might give us just a mean press roll, to hit on the 4, and then our bass player might just start laying out. Okay, and so we have to make adjustments, and that's why we cannot be lick players, right? Be players that just fall into the comforts of their own bag, right? They pull out lick number 4 because they've practiced it 80 times, lick number 3 because it sounds good over the blues. They're there in that moment, in that time, creating. And I think that is when we can truly learn from these licks. I think that's all I got, Mike. How about you?
Wow. Okay. One thing I did take that you said, which was all great information. You said something about energy, about maybe at a session and someone is, they're playing a lot of notes and they're doing all this great stuff. And then maybe you should think different, change of the energy. I love that, because sometimes as musicians, I think, we try to match what we hear, but that wise musician always says, okay, well, you heard that. Let me introduce something new in the mix. And I think that's where simplicity comes into play. Because sometimes, and I tell my students all the time, they may not be able to sing a solo that they heard Dizzy Gillespie play. Me, the average person, can't. They can't go, oh, it can't do that. That probably didn't sound like a Dizzy solo, but you get what I mean.
Oh, it got me dizzy for sure.
But, one thing I loved about Miles, he would play something so simple and effective that you would sing it all the way home. Cannonball Adderley, he would play something that's like, oh, why didn't I think of that? And it was genius. So I thank you that you brought that home about being tasteful, listening to the greats and transcribe it. And like you said, not many of us can go and play Charlie Parker, and I meant to ask you that. That's one of the questions. Do you feel that the saxophone may have some advantage to playing, the stuff that Charlie Parker played compared to maybe a trombone? Or is it all fair playing field? What would you say with that?
Well, obviously, if you're trying to play Charlie Parker transcriptions, it's made for the saxophone, right? So ergonomically, that means ease of use for the human body. It's going to be a little bit easier for you in terms of navigating the solo and sort of putting that information transparently to your instrument. However, it's fair game. It's absolutely fair game for everyone to sort of find that technique that you're searching for, to maybe display that facility of a run that maybe Charlie Parker, might have played, right? And that's what makes that moment, if you do pull that off, so much better. And the crowd's wooing and hooping and hollering, and guys that really understand the music, they are going to give you your props, because maybe you played a Charlie Parker, 30-second line on, you name it, right? On a different instrument here. And it's really that essence of the music that you're going to understand, right? And just like you're saying, going back to what we were discussing with the feeling, the energy, it's the essence of the music. If you're feeling that high energy well, then either you're going to feel to carry that high energy in your solo, or you're going to feel to do something completely different. And I think both of those have their own, just great points about them.
Okay, understood. So tell me this, are there any musicians you could recommend, or any recordings that if somebody was learning licks, what's a go-to person that, it wouldn't frustrate the listener or the musician so much to try? I've always heard Lester Young. Someone simplistic that we can listen to, we can learn, and kind of figure it out. Because definitely we don't want to start with Charlie Parker. We want to listen, but just jumping in there with that, that's going to be a little bit much. But let's go from a trombonist standpoint. Who is a trombonist that if you would recommend, hey, you want to improvise, start listening to this, pick up this lick? Who's somebody that they can listen to and they can get it and be effective?
Well, for jazz trombone, the number one name that I could think of right now is J.J. Johnson. He is the jazz master. Now, it's important, though, to understand the lineage of trombone from Jack Teagarden, Kid Ory back in, and again, these are genres here. But in terms of jazz trombone and how it was created, how it's used, how it's still used today, J.J. Johnson, without a doubt, should be the number one musician that you're checking out. Why? Well, his sound. Okay, his sound on the tenor trombone, for one, is absolutely remarkable, whether he's playing ballads or he's playing, or turnpike, right? Something very quick. His facility, his articulation is phenomenal. His voice leading, absolutely, just bar none of the period. Now, is it so advanced that you'll get lost? Sometimes, okay, but for the majority of it, it's wholesome trombone playing that on every level, a trombonist or any musician should appreciate the fundamental values there. And okay. Okay.
Oh, go ahead. About
I was going to say, I was going to say for another name, kind of give you guys a little extra tidbit, for tuning in here. Hank Mobley is a non-trombonist that I would recommend all of you guys to check out, viewing that maybe do not know his name as well. Now, Hank Mobley is a tenor saxophonist, but one of my favorite traits, qualities of Hank Mobley's playing is his ableness to combine bebop and the blues, and how fluid and smooth his transitions are between his playing. It's absolutely fluid. This I Dig of You is one of his compositions. Maybe that tune might ring a bell for some of you guys.
Okay, awesome. Last question. And I mentioned Lester Young. I love listening.
You did mention Lester, yeah.
And, it seems like he was so effective. He didn't have to get so busy. Mm-hmm. And, he said something with his instrument. Every time he played, it was meaningful. Let's go a little bit more modern. Who are the new players out there that are making some noise, who's swinging right now, that you would recommend, hey, listen to this guy here? We hear about the snarky puppies and all that stuff, but is there a name that you could drop that maybe many people might not know about that they really do need to hear right now?
Sure. There's a few personnel that, in terms of modern jazz trombone playing, I think they're really setting the bar and transcending what this music was to what it is in 2021 onward. So Nick Finzer, he's a trombonist. He's a Juilliard graduate. He's currently the professor at University of North Texas. He is a phenomenal trombonist, has many projects in the working, a new one coming out as well. And he has a summer camp going on right now that anyone can join. It's completely virtual, and just his quality of music since 2014, I want to say, was his first album. I think he was 26 at the time. His evolution has just been great to watch. I actually got to study with him at Florida State for a few years before I went to USF. Another name here is Elliot Mason. He's a trombonist for the Jazz at Lincoln Center big band. And again, his vocabulary, his technique, his facility on the trombone is almost freakish. And his sounds, what he's able to compose, not only on his instrument, but what he's able to conceive in his head is just remarkable. So if you're looking for a different, maybe harmonic sound to dive into, I would recommend Elliot as well.
You know, as far as the trumpet, I love Sean Jones. He's always pushing the envelope. I'm a huge Nicholas Payton fan. I mean, well, here's a guy that can play trumpet and keyboard at the same time. That's something I won't try right now, but I'll let him have that. That's really multitasking there. But, you know, this has been an awesome session, Tyler. And, you know, I just want to recommend to our listeners, if you are enjoying this, if you're getting something from it, whether you're a beginner or a seasoned musician, we highly recommend first, just share it. You know, share it with someone. Share it with someone that may, you know, maybe they're on the fence. They say, hey, you know, I really want to play jazz, but I don't understand the inner workings of this. Well, we have a library of videos from so many great educators, musicians that are out there right now on the stage doing it. And you get a personal lesson right here. And it's free. Who offers something like this for free? Clearwater Jazz. That's right. So we want to thank everyone for coming in and listening to our sessions. Don't forget, go to the website, www.clearwaterjazz.com/education for our free sessions that's coming up. You can email us at info@clearwaterjazz.com and check out all our sessions. And we look forward to the next session with you. Thank you, Professor. And we will see you on the next one. Keep it swinging, everybody. I'm your guest host, Michael Canodal. Have a great day. Bye-bye.